All right, let's get right into it. What we're looking at is a classic David versus Goliath story, but it's playing out with 21st century weapons. On one side, you have the most technologically advanced, most expensive military the world has ever seen. And on the other, a nation under heavy sanctions that's somehow, well, challenging that very dominance. So the big question is, how is this even possible? Let's break it down.
So, first things first, let's just wrap our heads around the scale we're talking about here. The US spends nearly $1 trillion a year on its military. I mean, that's just a mind boggling number. It pays for the most advanced, most sophisticated hardware you can even imagine. And the whole point of that investment, right? It's to guarantee overwhelming, unquestionable superiority no matter the conflict. And that right there, that's the paradox, isn't it? It's the puzzle at the heart of what we're looking at today. How can Iran, a country under crippling sanctions, even begin to pose a real problem for that trillion-dollar machine? Well, the answer, as we're about to see, isn't just about who has the most money, it's about who has the smarter strategy. Okay, let's start with a big one, the crown jewel of American air power, the stealth fighter. For decades, the whole idea of American dominance in the skies has been built on this concept of invisibility. But it turns out that invincible shield might not be so invincible after all. This is where things get really interesting. You have two completely different stories. The long-standing myth, right, is that the F-35 is basically a ghost in the sky. It's invisible to radar. But then you have Iran's claim, which just flips that whole idea on its head. They say they not only tracked one, but they actually hit it. And here's the kicker. They didn't even use radar. They did it by following its heat. So, you're probably asking, how on earth is that possible? Well, it comes down to this piece of tech right here, an electro-optical/infrared sensor. The easiest way to think about it is like a superpowered thermal camera. It's not looking for a blip on a radar screen. Nope. It's looking for the massive plume of heat blasting out of the jet's engines. And just like that, you see how a much cheaper, smarter approach can completely sidestep a multi-billion-dollar piece of stealth technology. It's a game changer. And you know what? This isn't a one-off. We see the exact same pattern playing out with another cornerstone of U.S. strategy, unmanned aerial vehicles, drones. The U.S. has leaned heavily on these high-tech machines for years, but now that reliance is starting to look, well, really costly. Just look at this number, 12. Reports say that's how many high-end MQ-9 Reaper drones the U.S. lost, and not over years, but in just the first few weeks of the conflict. Now remember, each one of these things is an incredibly sophisticated and expensive piece of kit, so losing a dozen, that fast, that's not just an equipment problem. That's a major strategic shock to the system. And this really gets to the heart of the issue. A lot of critics are now saying what some have thought for a while. These drones are great when you have total control of the air, but they're just too slow and too vulnerable when you're up against a serious opponent with modern air defenses. It's a classic case of the battlefield evolving faster than the playbook. All right, so we've looked at the air with stealth jets and drones. Now let's shift our focus to the sea. For as long as most of us can remember, the U.S. aircraft carrier has been the undisputed king of the ocean, the ultimate symbol of American power. But believe it or not, even that is now being seriously challenged. And the impact here is huge. Think about it. The whole point of a carrier is to get close and project power, but the constant threat from Iran's arsenal of cheap yet effective missiles has created a kind of no-go zone. It's forcing these billion-dollar warships to stay way back, much farther from the coast, which really limits what they can do. Then you throw in other problems, like a reported fire on the USS Gerald R. Ford, and the picture that emerges is one of a naval force that's really feeling the heat. Okay, so if the offense is having trouble, what about the defense? I mean, the U.S. has spent a fortune on the world's most advanced missile defense systems. The whole idea is to create this impenetrable shield over bases and allies. But the reality? Yeah, it's been a very different story. Just look at the scorecard here. The Patriot system, meant to protect the guys on the ground, reportedly penetrated. The THAAD system, designed to knock down high-altitude threats, bypassed. So what you're seeing is a pattern. This incredibly expensive, multi-layer defense shield is being consistently poked full of holes by a clever mix of Iranian drones and missiles. Now, all of this, the setbacks in the air, the challenges at sea, the failing defenses, none of this happens in a bubble. These aren't just technical problems. They have very real political consequences. And in this case, they led to something pretty unexpected. So let's just walk through the logic here. Step 1, your super advanced technology is proven to be vulnerable. Step 2,
Your key military assets, worth billions, are either getting destroyed or are seriously at risk. So what's step 3? Suddenly, there's an offer for a 5-day pause. When you look at it that way, the analysis suggests this wasn't a powerful nation offering a diplomatic olive branch. It looks a lot more like a forced timeout to regroup from a position of surprising weakness. And this really is the bottom line, the key takeaway from all of this. What we're witnessing isn't just a couple of lucky shots. It is a very disciplined, very smart, asymmetric strategy in action. Iran identified specific weaknesses, they developed cost-effective ways to exploit them, and it's working. They are outmaneuvering a trillion-dollar investment in raw technology.
So I want to leave you with this final thought. For decades, there's been this underlying assumption in warfare. The side with the best tech, the most expensive toys, automatically wins. But what we're seeing here, it throws a massive wrench in that whole idea. It really makes you wonder, has that era come to an end? Is it possible that clever strategy and finding your enemy's weak spot are now just as powerful or maybe even more powerful than having the biggest budget? It certainly seems like the rules of the game are changing right before our eyes.